So South Africa's new military ombud may have a tough task ahead. Lieutenant General Vusi Masondo was recently sworn into the role and is responsible for investigating complaints in the South African National Defence Force. He takes over an office with a large caseload and a low performance rate. Let's hear from the man himself tonight, Lieutenant General Masondo, speaking to us from our Pretoria studios. Lieutenant General, a very good evening to you and thank you for your time. So you began your duties, you were sworn in at least, on the 8th of this month. We're on the 25th. Have you hit the ground running?
Good evening to you, ma'am, and good evening to your listeners. Of course, I was appointed in the post with effect from 1 November 2019, but I only assumed the office on the 11th of November because I still had to do handing and taking over with my successor in the SANDF before assuming my current post.
So as you come in, only 20% of the targets set for the 2018-2019 financial year have been met by the Office of the Ombud for the SANDF. How are you going to improve that?
Ma'am, that information that was reported by Defence Web, I don't think it was completely accurate. In the previous financial year, the Office of Ombud set itself 11 performance targets. Out of those, only 4 actually were below 70% attainment. So given that kind of record, I don't think we can say the performance really was poor. However, there's an area that is of concern to me, an area of finalization of complaints. The office had set itself a target of 75, but only managed to complete about 47% of the complaints. So that's one area that I've been interacting with the staff to say we need to really turn this around.
So how are you going to turn it around?
Well, I've tried to inquire into the challenges that are there in terms of, first and foremost, keeping to the time frames for finalization of complaints. And one of the reasons I've been given is that sometimes the responses from the officials in the SANDF are not prompt enough. So it is my intention to pay courtesy calls to the chiefs of services and divisions so that together we can map up a way forward in terms of ensuring that they provide the required responses as speedily as possible.
So just on the issue of finalized cases, I understand 246 cases have been finalized in the 2018-2019 financial year. That's down from over 600 in the previous financial year. What was responsible for that dramatic change?
Well, as I say, I've been interacting with the staff. And I've said to them, in the 17-18 financial year, we've set ourselves a bar very high, which we need to use as a standard measure for moving forward. Of course, a number of excuses that have been given in terms of the performance in the previous financial year. So as I say, I'm there to unlock the blockages in the system and ensure that we comply with the Act in terms of responding to the complaints expeditiously.
I want to ask you about a big military story that's dominated a lot of the coverage in the past year. That's been about Major Fatima Jacobs and whether she should be allowed to wear her Muslim headscarf under her beret. And you may not be able to speak to the specifics of the case, but I want to ask you this question. Is it not time for the military to have a complete review or overhaul of some of the old rules around dress code and some of that other stuff?
Ma'am, the military is an institution with its culture, you know. And members who joined the SANDF, they joined on a purely voluntary basis, which means, therefore, they subscribe to the culture of the institution and are ready to abide by that culture. And of course, it is a culture that unifies all the members of the SANDF who comes from different cultures of our society.
But Lieutenant General,
we cannot have a...
My
yes.
apologies, I want to come in there. You say it's part of a culture and people sign up voluntarily. I'll point you to the recent examples of girls' schools that were recently challenged quite successfully in the country on issues of hair policy. What use is a policy if something like a headscarf does not harm any of the other people in the service? What is the harm of wearing one?
Ma'am, you know, in the SANDF there's a prescribed uniform, and the manner in which that uniform must be worn, you know. And if we are going to then allow everybody to require that we adjust the wearing of that uniform to their cultural needs or religious needs, then we'll have a situation where all religions, all cultures will want to the SANDF to subscribe to those, and therefore it will undermine cohesion within the SANDF.
How would such diversity undermine cohesion?
As I said, you know, you can take even institutions in the private sector, you know, and when interviews are conducted with people who want to join those institutions, you know, one of the issues they check is whether the member who wants to join that institution will be compatible to the culture that is practiced there, you know. We cannot have a situation where people come from outside the organization and want to impose their own culture on the organization when it has its institutional culture.
All right, Lieutenant General Vusi Masondo, thank you so much for your time tonight.